He wasn't reckless. He wasn't emotional. At least that's what everyone thought. On paper, his system was flawless. Multi-time frame confirmation, risk to reward locked at 1 to 3, and execution so disciplined you'd think he had ice in his veins. But on a quiet Thursday morning in March, something cracked. One click, one override. And within 14 minutes, $700,000 gone. When asked what happened, he couldn't answer. He stared down, hands trembling, and said the words that should terrify any trader more than a drawdown. I don't know why I did it, but what if I told you that's more common than you think? That the most dangerous trade isn't the one you planned. It's the one you don't remember making. Not because you were unconscious, but because something deeper, older, and more powerful hijacked your hand before your logic could scream stop. What if the real strategy you've been following isn't in your journal, but in your nervous system? Welcome to Trading Psychology Stick, where we decode the invisible forces behind every click. Quick note, this content explores psychological patterns in trading. It's educational, not financial advice. Your trades, your responsibility. Now, let's dive deep. Welcome to the Black Box Trader. In this series, we're not just analyzing trades, we're opening the recorder inside you, the one that's been taping since childhood. Every trauma, every rejection, every unprocessed emotion encoded as trading behavior. You thought this was about charts? This is about echoes. This is about hearing the voice you've ignored. The one that's been clicking market buy before your brain even knew what price was. This isn't psychology. This is recovery. And the only way to move forward is to rewind. Section 1. Every click is a playback. You don't make decisions. You play recordings. And the market, it's not your opponent. It's your amplifier. Every chart, every candlestick, every sudden spike or slow bleed doesn't show you reality. It shows you which recording your nervous system just hit play on. You think you're reacting to the market? No. You're responding to the last time you felt uncertain. The last time you were punished for being wrong. The last time control was ripped away from you, and you swore you'd never feel that helpless again. And now, that ancient feeling is disguised as a setup. You stare at a potential breakout. The chart looks clean, your confluences line up, but something in your chest tightens. Your mouse hand freezes. You know this setup wins more often than not, but your body doesn't trust it. Why? Because it's not reacting to this trade. It's reacting to that trade, the one that failed, the one you buried. Or worse, it's reacting to something before charts ever entered your life. A trader once told me he never held a trade long enough. He always took profit early, even when his system told him to wait. When we traced it back, it wasn't about greed or fear. It was about punishment. When he was 7, he got yelled at for being too slow. That moment etched itself into his body. And decades later, in front of a screen, that same panic rose every time he waited. His body couldn't tell the difference between being yelled at by a parent and waiting for a candle to close. Let me lighten this for a second. You know what's funny? We spend thousands on courses learning to read charts, but zero time learning to read ourselves. We can spot a bearish divergence from across the room, but can't spot our own emotional patterns if they slapped us with a margin call. This is the truth most trading educators never touch. Most of your trades are emotional reflexes trying to resolve old pain. You're not triggered by the market. The market simply creates just enough pressure for your unconscious to show its face. This is why trading feels personal, because it is. The same mechanism that remembers danger in your environment also governs risk on your chart. But here's the kicker. The memory doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to be emotional. So you keep clicking, sometimes in perfect flow, sometimes with total sabotage. And you label it discipline, or lack of edge, or FOMO. But none of those words matter if you're not listening to what your nervous system has recorded. Because every losing trade you can't explain, it didn't come from your logic, it came from your loop. And you know what loops do. They don't end until you interrupt them. So here's your first moment of truth. That last unexplainable trade, the one that made no sense, what was it trying to replay? Take a second. Really think about it. Because awareness begins with one simple admission. That wasn't random. That was familiar. But that's just the surface of the tape. Because to understand why you trade the way you do, we need to look at what's actually happening in your brain the moment before you click. Section 2, the Amygdala Hijack. You just read about emotional recordings, but here's what's actually happening in your skull. Daniel Goleman called it the Amygdala Hijack, and once you understand it, Every impulsive trade makes terrifying sense. See, you don't have one brain making trading decisions. You have three, and they're at war. The reptilian brain, your oldest hardware, only cares about survival, fight, flight, or freeze. The limbic system, home to your amygdala, processes emotions and triggers faster than thought. And finally, your neocortex, the rational trader you think you are, trying desperately to run probability calculations while the other two are screaming. Here's the killer. Your amygdala processes information 80 milliseconds faster than your rational brain. That means, by the time you think you're analyzing a setup, your emotional brain has already decided. It's already flooding your system with cortisol or dopamine. Your analysis is just your neocortex trying to rationalize what your amygdala already chose. A neuroscientist once showed me brain scans of traders in action. When they saw sudden price movement, the amygdala lit up like a Christmas tree. The rational brain, dim, almost offline. In those moments, you're not trading with 20 years of experience. You're trading with the same brain that helped your ancestors run from tigers. But here's where it gets interesting. Goleman found something called the 18-second rule. When the amygdala fires, the chemical flood lasts about 18 seconds. If you can wait just 18 seconds without acting, your neocortex comes back online. 18 seconds. That's all that stands between you and your primitive brain. One trader I worked with put a sticky note on his monitor. 18 seconds equals $18,000. That's what his average impulse trade cost him. Now, when he feels the surge, he counts. Not to delay the trade, but to let his human brain rejoin the conversation. Next time you feel that urgent, must-click now sensation, start counting. Watch what happens around second 12. The urgency peaks. By second 18, you'll feel different. Not calm necessarily, but clear. That's your neocortex saying, thanks for waiting. Now, let's look at this properly. The amygdala isn't your enemy. It's trying to protect you from perceived danger. But in trading, it can't tell the difference between a red candle and a real threat. So it hijacks your system, shuts down logic, and clicks based on survival, not strategy. You want to know why revenge trading feels so compulsive? Because once the amygdala categorizes a loss as an attack, it won't stop until the threat is neutralized. But you can't fight a market, so you keep clicking, trying to win a war that only exists in your limbic system. The solution isn't to suppress emotions, it's to create space. Those 18 seconds are your circuit breaker. Use them. Because the distance between your amygdala and your neocortex is exactly 18 seconds and about $100,000. But knowing your brain is only part of it. The real question is, who programmed your amygdala's responses in the first place? Section 3. When your dad pressed the button first, he never touched a trading screen in his life, never placed a limit order, never read a candlestick. And yet, your father, or whoever shaped your early emotional landscape, may have more influence on your trades than any analyst you follow today. You see, long before you learned about stop losses and Fibonacci levels, you learned about approval, control, and punishment. You learned what it meant to be right, what it cost to be wrong, and what silence felt like when you made a mistake. These early emotional codes didn't disappear. They migrated into your keyboard, into your risk sizing, into how long you hold a position. One trader I worked with had a beautiful system. 65% win rate, reward to risk, 2.5 on average. But he kept doing the same thing, pulling the trigger early. He'd see a signal, confirm everything, but hesitate. A 1-second delay that cost thousands over time. When we traced it back, it wasn't about mistrust of the market. It was about a memory, being 8 years old, raising his hand in class, giving the wrong answer, and watching his father shake his head in quiet disappointment. That moment wasn't loud, but it echoed. Every time he saw uncertainty, his body remembered that shake of the head, and it flinched. This is identity fusion, where your emotional worth fuses with your trade outcome, where taking a loss isn't a loss, it's being wrong, it's being a failure. And that failure isn't new, it's just a ghost, wearing the face of a chart. You might not remember the words, but you remember the rules. Be perfect. Don't speak until you're sure. Don't risk being seen as stupid. And now, decades later, that same fear makes you freeze when you should act when you should wait, or chase when you should cut. Here's what fascinates me. Ask any trader about their worst loss, and they'll tell you about numbers. But ask them what it felt like, and watch their face change. Suddenly, they're not in their trading room, they're somewhere else. Some earlier moment of judgment, That's not coincidence, that's connection. The market doesn't create these fears, it reveals them. It puts you in scenarios where uncertainty is the only constant and then lets your emotional blueprint take over. But here's the danger. When you're unaware of whose voice is behind the trade, you'll keep obeying it. You'll follow signals that aren't on your screen, but in your nervous system. Quick check-in. How's your breathing right now? If you noticed it just changed, that's your body recognizing something. That's good. That means we're getting somewhere. So let me ask you, and this one matters. When you close too early, who are you trying to please? When you hold too long, who are you afraid to disappoint? When you revenge trade, whose anger are you channeling? Because if you don't know who's actually clicking the mouse, you're not a trader, you're an echo. But echoes can be interrupted, they can be re-recorded, and here's where it gets even stranger, because some of the most painful trades you'll ever experience never actually happened. Section 4, Phantom Trades, Real Pain. There are losses you can count, then there are losses you feel. And strangely, the ones that hurt most, the ones that haunt you at 3:47 a.m., often aren't even real, not in the literal sense. They're the trades you didn't take, the ones you almost clicked, the breakout you passed on, the bounce you second-guessed, the setup you watched run 1,000 points while you sat frozen. These missed trades are ghosts. They don't exist in your statement, but they live rent-free in your nervous system. A trader once confessed to me that he felt more rage missing a perfect entry than taking an actual loss. He wasn't angry at the market, he was angry at himself. He felt betrayed not by price, but by his hesitation. And what followed was predictable, emotional hijack. He jumped into the next available setup with twice the size, trying to make up for what he never really lost. That trade failed, and the cycle deepened. You see, the human brain isn't great at distinguishing reality from simulation, especially when emotions are involved. In neuroscience, this is called counterfactual thinking, replaying alternative realities that didn't happen but feel like they did. And in trading, counterfactuals are brutal because your brain logs the missed win as a felt loss, which means you start trading to recover from trades that were never real to begin with. Here's something that might help. I used to beat myself up over missed trades until I realized something. The market creates thousands of setups every day. Missing one is like being upset you didn't catch a specific wave in the ocean. There's always another one coming, but our brain doesn't see it that way, does it? This is the phantom limb phenomenon of trading. You reach for something that isn't there. You hurt in places that were never touched. And just like amputees who still feel their missing leg itch, you feel the burn of a loss that never hit your account but wrecked your confidence. And it goes deeper, because missed trades don't just trigger frustration, they encode shame. You didn't just miss an opportunity, you failed to act. You were weak, indecisive. And now the identity kicks in. Real traders wouldn't hesitate. I'm not built for this. That voice becomes your internal narrator. And that narrator becomes your new strategy, one driven not by logic, but by the need to not feel weak again. Daniel Kahneman called this prospect theory. We feel losses twice as intensely as equivalent gains. But missed opportunities? They hit different. They combine loss aversion with regret, creating a psychological cocktail that drives irrational behavior. So the next time you hesitate, your nervous system spikes not from the setup, but from the echo of last week's miss. You have to act now, but not because the chart says so, because your body can't handle another phantom pain. That's how traders spiral, not from bad systems, from unresolved counterfactual trauma. So, what do? You name it, you write it. You create what I call a ghost trade journal, a space to document every missed move as if it was a trade. Not to relive it, but to neutralize it. Because the moment you make your phantom trades visible, they stop haunting your future ones. Try this right now. Think of your last big missed trade. Write down what you felt, not what you missed. Was it anger, regret, self-doubt? Now write. This feeling is real, but the loss is not. Watch how something shifts. Because what you can see, you can heal. And what you can heal, you can reprogram. But if phantom trades can hurt this bad, what about the signals your body sends before your mind even knows a trade exists? Section 5. The map is not the territory. Alfred Korzybski said something that changed how I see trading forever. The map is not the territory. Your mental model of the market isn't the market. Your beliefs about price action aren't price action. And the words you use to describe your trading, they're not just descriptions, they're programming. Think about the language you use. The market took my stop. price rejected me. I got chopped up. Notice something. You're not describing price movement. You're describing a relationship, an abusive one, and your unconscious doesn't know you're speaking metaphorically. Tony Robbins built on this idea. The words you use create your reality. If you say the market is out to get me, your nervous system prepares for battle. If you say I always mess this up, your brain starts scanning for evidence to confirm it. Language isn't neutral. It's creative. One trader I worked with kept saying I'm fighting the market. So I asked him to change one word. Instead of fighting, he'd say I'm dancing with the market. Sounds silly? His win rate improved 20% in 6 weeks. Not because the market changed, because his nervous system stopped treating every trade like combat. Here's an experiment that will shock you. Record yourself talking about your trades for 1 week, then transcribe it. Count how many times you use words like battle, fight, attack, defend, survive. Now count words like flow, adapt, respond, adjust. Which list is longer? That ratio predicts your stress level more accurately than your P&L. The map you're using isn't just technical analysis. It's the entire conceptual framework you've built around trading. And if that framework is based on conflict, guess what? Every session becomes a war. Even when you win, you're exhausted. But here's where it gets powerful. You can redraw the map, not by affirmations or positive thinking, by precise language changes that reprogram your unconscious responses. Instead of I lost, try. The trade didn't work. Instead of I'm down, try. My account is adjusting. Instead of stop loss got hit, try risk management activated. Feel the difference? One makes you a victim. The other keeps you sovereign. Ray Dalio talks about this in Principles. He calls it accurate thinking, but it goes deeper than accuracy. It's about creating linguistic structures that support flow states rather than trigger threat responses. Here's your protocol. For 1 week, ban these words from your trading vocabulary. Always, never, destroyed, killed, murdered, attacked. Replace them with, sometimes, learning, adjusting, testing, exploring. Watch what happens to your emotional state. Watch what happens to your clicking. The market isn't attacking you, it's offering information. You're not fighting, you're interpreting. This isn't war, it's translation. And the moment you change the language, you change the game. But language is processed in your conscious mind. What about the intelligence that lives in your body, speaking a language older than words? Section 6, body first, brain second. You think you're the one making the decision. That your mind analyzes the setup, calculates risk, confirms the signal, and then clicks. But science has a cruel twist. Your body knows before your brain does. In a groundbreaking study, researchers found that subjects showed physiological responses like increased skin conductance, subtle changes in heart rate up to 7 seconds before they made a conscious decision. And in trading, 7 seconds is a lifetime. It starts subtly. Your fingers tremble a little more than usual. Your stomach tightens for no apparent reason. You find yourself staring at the price, but not really seeing it. That's not nerves. That's your body remembering. Because every trauma, every panic exit, every sudden market reversal you've ever felt didn't just imprint on your mind. It wrote itself into your flesh. We call these somatic markers. They are unconscious body signals stored from emotional experiences, and they whisper louder than thought. Antonio Damasio discovered this studying patients with brain damage. Those who lost the connection between body and emotion couldn't make decisions. Not wouldn't, couldn't. Because decisions aren't made in the mind, they're made in the mind-body system. A trader once told me he always felt a tightness in his neck before a bad trade. He thought it was tension, until he began tracking it. Day after day, that same sensation arrived before he entered a position that turned into a loss. His body knew. His brain just hadn't caught up. Peter Levine, who developed somatic experiencing, found that trauma lives in the body, not the mind. And trading, it's a trauma factory. Every significant loss, every flash crash, every margin call leaves an imprint, not in your thoughts, in your tissues. Here's the terrifying truth. Your trading behavior is downstream of your physiology. You think you're responding to the market. You're actually reacting to an internal signal fired by a memory your mind hasn't even recalled yet. These signals are predictive, not mystical, biological. They're the nervous system's way of saying, we've seen this pattern before. Last time it hurt. Abort mission. But because we're taught to override feelings, especially in trading, we dismiss the message. We click anyway, and then we pay for it. Try this somatic trading protocol. Before every session, do a body scan. Start at your head, move down to your toes. Rate each area's tension from 1 to 10. Log it. After trading, scan again. Compare the numbers with your P&L. Within 2 weeks, you'll see patterns your mind missed for years. One trader discovered his shoulders rose exactly 1.5 inches before every revenge trade. Another found her breathing shifted to her upper chest before FOMO kicks in. These aren't quirks, they're early warning systems. Somatic intelligence isn't about being in tune or spiritual. It's about noticing the micro signals your body gives before your logic wakes up. The heartbeat that speeds up as price approaches a key level. The shallow breath when risk gets too real. The slight pullback of your hand before entering a size too large. Your body is already running the most sophisticated pattern recognition system on Earth. You just haven't learned its language yet, but once you do, you'll have an edge no algorithm can match. Because algorithms don't have bodies, they don't store trauma, they don't remember. But some body memories create more than tension. They create shame. And in trading, shame is a serial killer. There's a moment after the loss when the chart fades away. The numbers blur, the setup dissolves, and all that's left is the feeling, not regret, not frustration. Something colder, something heavier. Shame. It wraps around your chest like a tightening belt. It whispers, "You knew better." It hisses, "You always mess this up." And in that moment, you're not a trader anymore. You're a child being scolded. You're a teenager who failed. You're a person who just proved, once again, that they are not enough. Brené Brown spent decades studying shame. She found it's different from guilt. Guilt says, "I did something bad." Shame says, "I am bad." And that distinction, it changes everything about how you trade next. Shame is the most dangerous emotion in trading, not because it's loud, but because it's surgical. It doesn't just hurt your confidence, it severs your identity. It tells you that the mistake wasn't something you did, it's something you are. I once coached a trader who followed every rule until he didn't. One over-leveraged trade, one swipe, one liquidation. He didn't come back for 3 months, not because he was broke, because he was humiliated. "How could I be so stupid?" he asked. But the real question hiding under that was darker. What if this confirms what I always feared about myself? Here's what neuroscience tells us. Shame activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Your brain literally can't tell the difference between a broken bone and broken pride. Both demand immediate action to stop the hurt. And in trading, that action is usually destructive. Shame doesn't just freeze you, it programs you. After one shame loop, you start changing your behavior not based on data, but based on avoidance. You stop holding trades because you can't bear to be wrong again. You exit early because watching it go against you feels like a personal attack. You switch systems every 2 weeks not because the edge is gone, but because you're terrified of being exposed again. James Clear writes about identity-based habits, but shame creates identity-based sabotage. If shame convinces you I'm a loser, guess what? You'll unconsciously create losses to confirm that identity. Not because you want to, because identities seek evidence. So, what do traders do? They hide, behind indicators, behind overanalysis, behind silence. But the black box keeps recording. Every suppressed emotion, every clenched jaw, every forced smile when someone asks how it's going, all of it gets filed, and eventually, it plays back. The only way out? Pattern interruption, what I call the shame protocol. First, you name the voice. This isn't the market talking. This is the part of me that learned failure equals rejection. Second, you speak the truth out loud. Literally, I made a mistake, but I am not the mistake. Third, you log it. Not just in your trade journal, in your emotional one. Track not just what the market did. Track what you said to yourself when it happened. But here's the advanced move. Shame can't survive being shared. Tell another trader about your worst, most shameful trade. Watch what happens. The moment it's spoken, it loses power. Not all of it, but enough to breathe again. Because shame doesn't stop you from trading. It keeps you trading from the wrong place. And until you break that loop, the trades that hurt you most will be the ones that sound like you. But shame is just one voice in the chorus. There's another one, older and louder, the voice of the one you could never quite satisfy. Section 8. The market is not your father. He doesn't show up on the screen, but he's there in every hesitation, every over-leveraged entry, every stubborn refusal to cut a loss, the authority figure, the one you could never impress, the one whose approval was always just out of reach. For some, it's a literal father. For others, a coach, a teacher, a mother, a cold boss. Whoever it was, they taught you one thing: you are only worthy if you are right. So now when the chart ticks against you, it doesn't feel like a setup breaking down. It feels like that voice again. You should have known better. When you cut a loss, it doesn't just sting financially. It reactivates the humiliation of being wrong in front of someone you needed to believe in you. And when you hold too long, it's not because you have conviction. It's because letting go would be admitting you failed. Again. And failure, in the presence of that voice, is unbearable. Gabor Mate writes about this in When the Body Says No. He found that adults who couldn't say no to others often had childhoods where saying no meant rejection or punishment. Now, apply that to trading. How many times have you couldn't say no to a bad setup because somewhere, deep down, you're still trying to prove you're good enough? One trader I worked with couldn't let go of a red trade. Even when his plan said to exit, he'd double down, hoping to force the win. When we traced it back, it wasn't about money. It was about memory. Growing up, his father only gave praise when he fixed something, never when he admitted fault. So the trader developed an unconscious rule: if I fix it, I'm worthy. If I cut it, I'm weak. That belief cost him over $200,000. Here's what you need to understand. The market has no opinion of you. It doesn't care about your performance. It's not watching you. But your nervous system doesn't know that. It projects old dynamics onto the chart. It turns price action into people. It turns volatility into judgment. And suddenly, you're not trading levels. You're trading ghosts. This is projection. Carl Jung called it seeing your unconscious in the external world. The market becomes a screen for your unresolved relationships. That's why a red candle can feel like criticism. Why a stop loss feels like abandonment. Why a winning trade sometimes feels empty, because the approval you're really seeking can't come from a chart. You'll overtrade trying to be noticed. You'll chase trying to prove your worth. You'll break your rules not because you're impulsive, but because the younger version of you still thinks there's someone to impress. But what if there isn't? What if the market isn't your father? What if it's just data, and the only one keeping score is you? Here's your exit: recognition. Every time you feel that burning need to prove something in a trade, pause, ask yourself, who am I talking to right now? Because it's almost never the market. Then, reclaim your agency. This trade does not define me. This result does not echo my past. I am not auditioning. I'm executing. The market is neutral. It's a mirror, not a judge. And once you stop trading with ghosts, you'll finally hear a new voice, yours. But finding your voice requires a skill almost no one teaches: the ability to listen to your internal recordings without becoming them. Section 9, Thinking Fast and Slow in Trading. Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for proving what every trader knows but won't admit: you're not as rational as you think. He identified two systems in your mind. System 1 is fast, automatic, intuitive. System 2 is slow, deliberate, logical. Guess which one dominates when money's on the line? System 1 evolved to keep you alive. It makes split-second decisions based on pattern recognition. See a snake? Jump back. No time for analysis. But in trading, System 1 sees patterns everywhere, even where none exist. 3 green candles, it's going up. Red hammer at support, reversal. Your intuition feels right because System 1 is always confident. But confidence and accuracy? Not the same thing. Here's what Kahneman discovered that should terrify every discretionary trader. System 1 is riddled with cognitive biases. Confirmation bias makes you see only evidence that supports your position. Availability bias makes recent losses feel more probable than statistics suggest. Anchoring bias makes you fixate on your entry price like it matters to the market. But the killer is prospect theory. Kahneman proved we feel losses twice as powerfully as equivalent gains. In trading terms, you'll risk $2 to avoid losing 1. You'll hold losers twice as long as winners. Not because you're weak, because you're human. A fund manager once showed me his trading data. His average winner, 47 minutes held. Average loser, 3 hours, 12 minutes. He held losers 4 times longer than winners. When I showed him the numbers, he didn't believe it. I cut losses quickly, he insisted. System 1 had been lying to him for years. So, how do you engage System 2 in the heat of trading? Kahneman's answer: structured processes that force slow thinking. Pre-mortem analysis, where you imagine a trade failed and work backward to find why. Statistical tracking that makes biases visible. What he calls adversarial collaboration, where you argue against your own trade thesis. But here's the twist most miss. System 1 isn't the enemy. It processes massive amounts of information instantly. The problem is when it operates alone. The solution? Create circuit breakers that activate System 2. One technique, the 10-10-10 rule. Before any trade, ask, how will I feel about this in 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days? This forces temporal perspective, a System 2 function. Another, the stranger test. If a stranger made this trade, what would I think? This creates psychological distance, another System 2 trigger. But the most powerful is what I call bias alerts, program notifications that pop up during trading. Check for confirmation bias. Are you anchoring? Is this FOMO or edge? These interrupts force System 2 online when System 1 is running hot. The goal isn't to trade like a robot. It's to know which system is driving, because System 1 will always be faster. But System 2 keeps you solvent. As Kahneman says, the confidence you feel in your intuitions is not a reliable guide to their validity. In trading, that's not philosophy. That's survival. But even with both systems engaged, there's still the question of listening to what they're saying without being controlled by it. Section 10. Listening without reacting. Silence isn't absence. In trading, silence is data. The question is, can you listen without obeying? Most traders can't. They hear a thought and act, feel a tug and click, get a flash of fear and exit. But those thoughts, those urges, those emotions, they're not instructions. They're just recordings, echoes from somewhere else. And just because they speak loudly doesn't mean they're telling the truth. John Kabat-Zinn, who brought mindfulness to Western medicine, has a phrase: you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. In trading, the waves are your thoughts and emotions. The surfing? That's listening without reacting. The art is in creating what Viktor Frankl called the space between stimulus and response. In that space lies your freedom. In trading terms, it's the gap between feeling, I must click now, and actually clicking. That gap? That's where fortunes are made or lost. Like a black box flight recorder being replayed after a crash. You don't jump back into the cockpit. You just listen. You observe. You track the sequence. You hear the panic in the pilot's voice, the confusion in the co-pilot, the rising alarms. And you learn. But only because you didn't become the recording. One trader I worked with implemented what we now call the 5-second echo. Every time an emotional surge hit, she paused. 5 seconds, no clicking, no deciding, just noticing. She would say out loud, recording. That single word interrupted the loop. It reminded her, this isn't new, this is familiar. And because it's familiar, it's probably not real. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches something profound. Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. In trading, your breath is your circuit breaker. When the urge to click floods in, breathe. Not to calm down, to create space. Here's a protocol from my own trading. I call it the stop technique. When emotional intensity spikes, stop what you're doing. Take a breath. Observe the sensation without judgment. Proceed with choice, not compulsion. This isn't meditation. It's tactical awareness. Navy SEALs use similar techniques in combat. Because whether you're in a firefight or a trade, the one who panics first loses. Listening without reacting is not suppression. It's separation. It's putting space between the voice and the action, between the urge and the execution. It's how you turn unconscious patterns into visible data. The paradox: the more you try to silence the voices, the louder they get. But when you listen without obeying, they lose their power, not immediately, but inevitably. As Alan Watts said, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. In trading, the dance is between your inner voices and your conscious choice, and you lead by listening. But what if your psychology could do more than just survive these voices? What if it could actually grow stronger from them? Section 11. Anti-fragile trading psychology. Nassim Taleb divided the world into 3 categories: fragile, robust, and anti-fragile. Most traders think they're building robust psychology. They're wrong. They're building fragile systems that shatter at the first real volatility. But what if your trading psychology could gain from disorder? Fragile psychology breaks under pressure. One big loss, and you're done for weeks. Robust psychology endures pressure. You take the loss and keep going. But anti-fragile psychology? It gets stronger from stressors. Every loss makes you better, not just at handling losses, but at trading itself. Here's the distinction most miss. Robust says, I can handle losses. Anti-fragile says, I need losses to improve, not want, need. Like muscles need resistance to grow. Taleb discovered this studying systems that survive black swans. Not by prediction, not by protection, by transformation. They don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. In trading psychology, this means building a system that feeds on volatility rather than just enduring it. A hedge fund trader I know lost 40% in 2020. By conventional standards, a disaster. But he had built anti-fragile psychology. He told me, that drawdown was my best teacher, not because I learned what went wrong, but because it revealed capabilities I didn't know I had. Today, his returns are triple what they were before the loss. So, how do you build anti-fragile trading psychology? First, small doses of poison. Taleb calls this hormesis. Take small losses deliberately. I'm serious. Plan micro losses that test your system. Not to lose money, but to inoculate your psychology. Every small loss is a vaccine against future tilt. Fragile traders have one emotional strategy. Stay calm. When that fails, they're done. Anti-fragile traders have backups. If I get triggered, I have protocol A. If that fails, protocol B. If everything fails, I have a circuit breaker, multiple fail-safes, not just one. Third, embrace randomness. Fragile psychology needs predictability. It breaks when surprised. Anti-fragile psychology expects chaos and has protocols for it. Not if the market goes crazy, but when the market goes crazy, here's how I benefit. Fourth, what Taleb calls barbell strategy for emotions. Be extremely conservative with core capital, extremely aggressive with learning capital. This creates psychological asymmetry. Small losses teach much. Large losses teach nothing. One trader implemented this and told me, I almost look forward to my stops being hit now. Not because I like losing, but because each one is making my psychology more bulletproof. The paradox is beautiful. The more you try to avoid all losses, the more fragile you become. The more you integrate losses as teachers, the more anti-fragile you grow. Your psychology stops being something that needs protection and becomes something that feeds on volatility. But here's the real secret of anti-fragility. It's not about being tough. It's about being adaptive. Like water that becomes stronger when it freezes. You don't resist the market's chaos. You transform through it. As Taleb says, wind extinguishes a candle and energizes fire. The question is, are you building candle psychology or fire psychology? But anti-fragility needs visibility to work. You need to see clearly what's happening inside you as it happens. Which brings us to transparency. Section 12, rewriting the flight plan. You've been flying on autopilot longer than you think, not just in trading, in life. Every reaction, every rule you cling to, every gut check override, it all comes from an invisible flight plan etched into your black box. It's not one you wrote consciously. It was coded by experience, emotion, expectation, by moments you forgot but your nervous system never did. And if you don't rewrite it, it will keep flying you into storms you think you chose. But here's the truth. No trading mentor will tell you. Most traders aren't struggling with strategy. They're struggling with destination. They're following a path not to wealth, not to freedom, but to validation, to revenge, to being right. Not because they want to, but because their flight plan is stuck on old coordinates. Stephen Covey called it beginning with the end in mind. But most traders begin with someone else's end in mind. They're flying toward their father's definition of success, their culture's idea of worth, their wounded ego's need for vindication. A trader once told me, I just want consistency. But when we peeled back the layers, what he really wanted was something else, control. In a childhood of chaos, he found peace and precision. Trading became the only space where he could prove he wasn't helpless. But that desire wasn't aligned with his trading style. It clashed. He kept forcing setups, overanalyzing, micromanaging entries. Why? Because deep down, the goal wasn't profit. It was safety. Your black box has been flying towards something. The question is, what? Approval, power, redemption? Until you know, you can't correct the course. because the destination will keep hijacking the route. So, how do you rewrite the plan? First, decode the objective. Ask, what emotional state am I chasing in my best trades? Most traders report words like certainty, relief, validation. That's the goal your plane is chasing, even if it crashes every time. Second, audit your patterns. Look at your last 20 trades. Circle every moment you deviated from your system. Now ask, what emotion was driving me? The black box doesn't make random noise. It loops. Find the loop, and you find the script. Third, write a new destination, literally. David Allen's Getting Things Done emphasizes capturing thoughts externally. Do this with your trading purpose. Define what trading is for, not as an idea but as an experience. Is it calm execution, detached observation, long-term mastery? Write it. Then read it before every session, because repetition rewires routes. Carol Dweck's growth mindset applies here. Fixed mindset says, I am a good bad trader. Growth mindset says, I am learning to trade better. One destination leads to fragility, the other to anti-fragility. Choose wisely. The goal isn't to erase your past. The goal is to give your system new instructions, to tell your nervous system, we're not flying toward fear anymore. We're flying toward flow. But make no mistake, the black box keeps recording, even as you rewrite. So the final skill isn't just to plan better. It's to see what's really happening inside. Section 13, black box to glass box. The black box protects. It hides what you're not ready to hear. It absorbs shocks, buries shame, masks hesitation under the surface so you can function until you can't. But what if you cracked it open? What if you replaced it with a glass box where every emotion, every impulse, every unconscious reflex became visible, not judged, not corrected, just seen? Because here's the paradox. What's hidden controls you. What's seen can be chosen. This is what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about thinking. But in trading, it's more. It's meta-emotion, feeling about feeling, watching your internal state like you watch a chart. With curiosity, not criticism. Turning the black box transparent isn't about becoming emotionally perfect. It's about emotional fluency. You stop reacting blindly. You start translating. This tightness, that's my old need to prove myself. That urge to double size, that's not confidence. That's panic in a suit. Dan Siegel calls this mind sight, the ability to see your own mind. In trading, it's the difference between being hijacked by an emotion and observing it. Between I am angry and I notice anger arising, small linguistic difference, massive behavioral impact. I once had a trader build what we called his clear box dashboard. He paired every trade entry with 3 simple data points: physical state like tense, calm, or scattered; emotional driver like revenge, flow, or fear; and self-talk. After a month, the results were shocking. His best trades came when his emotional state was boring. No spikes, no big swings, no internal drama, just stillness. Quiet execution. This aligns with what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi found studying flow states. Peak performance comes not from high arousal or low arousal, but from optimal arousal with clear feedback. The glass box provides that feedback in real time. To build your own glass box, start small. After each trade, ask, what was I feeling right before I clicked? Was that feeling familiar? Did it match the outcome? Then log it, not in a spreadsheet, in a separate emotional P&L journal. Over time, you'll discover your real edge isn't just risk to reward, it's awareness to action ratio. Ray Dalio's radical transparency applies here. But instead of transparency with others, it's transparency with yourself. No hiding, no narrative, just data. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio found that people who can accurately report their internal state make better decisions. Not because they're smarter, because they have more data. Your glass box becomes your edge. When your black box becomes a glass box, there are no more surprises, only signals, only choices. And for the first time, the trade feels clean. But even with perfect transparency, there's still one moment, the final choice, where everything you've learned either becomes action or stays theory. Section 14. The final click is yours. It always comes down to a moment, one breath, one blur of thought, one tiny twitch in your finger before the mouse is pressed. And in that instant, the entire flight path of your nervous system, Every old memory, every black box, playback, every subconscious belief you never chose collides into a single, irreversible action. Click. That's the moment most traders believe they're deciding. But by the time they're clicking, the decision's already been made by the loop, the voice, the past. Unless this time is different. Because there's a truth most traders never hear. The click can be reclaimed. You see, after all the pattern recognition, the awareness, the journaling, the reflection, there is still a wild, alive, electric moment where you can choose. Not react, not repeat. Choose. Viktor Frankl survived the concentration camps by discovering this. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. In trading, that space exists between seeing the setup and clicking the mouse. Most traders don't even know the space exists. They live in instant reaction. But choice only exists when awareness is present. You can't choose if you're still negotiating with shame. You can't choose if you're still chasing phantom wins. You can't choose if you're trying to impress a ghost. The final click only becomes yours when the voice that whispers "do it" gets answered by a deeper one that says, "Wait, I see you." I watched this happen with a trader I worked with for 8 months. He used to be a loop machine, cut winners short, revenge traded losses, never journaled his body. But near the end, something shifted. In a live session, he paused over an A-plus setup, but his breath hitched. He waited. Then he whispered to himself, "This isn't mine." He didn't click. That silence made him more money than any trade he'd ever placed, because that was the first time he traded from sovereignty, not survival. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In trading, outside events are price action. Your mind is the final click. Own one, respond to the other. The black box didn't vanish, but it was no longer in charge, and that's the transformation. Not that you eliminate the recordings, but that you stop being ruled by them. You stop clicking because you must. You start clicking because you choose. So, the next time your finger hovers over the button, ask, is this mine? Is this my signal or my scar? Is this my plan or my past? Because the final click, the one that defines your edge, your growth, your identity, is the one you didn't let the echo make for you. It's the one you pressed with presence, and that's when you stop trading against yourself. That's when the loop breaks. That's when the new recording begins. You've just listened to 14 recordings from inside your black box, but this time, you didn't click. You didn't react. You watched. You listened. You followed the voice into the dark, and now you know what's really been driving your trades. Not fear, but memory. Not greed, but unresolved shame. Not randomness, but old recordings on repeat. We've uncovered the trade you couldn't explain, the feeling you thought was intuition, but was really just survival. We traced the edge you thought was strategy back to a childhood moment. We revealed the ghosts you're trading against, and we gave you back what was always yours, the final click. We've shown you how your amygdala hijacks your neocortex in 80 milliseconds, how your words program your results, how your body knows before your brain, how Kahneman System 1 lies with confidence, how to become psychologically anti-fragile, how to turn your black box transparent. But don't let this just be information. Let it become integration. If this video felt like someone read your trade journal, not the numbers, but the confessions between the lines, then this is your moment to step out of the cockpit and into the control tower, to move from being the echo to being the one who rewrites the frequency. So here's your next move. Comment below with just one phrase, "Recording interrupted." That's your signal. That's your contract with yourself. But here's the deeper question I want you to answer in your comment. What's one pattern you recognized in yourself while watching? Was it the phantom trades, the amygdala hijack, the ghost you're still trying to impress? Share it, because naming it out loud is the first step to changing it. Replay this episode the next time you feel yourself slipping. When you're hesitating, forcing, justifying, let it be your reminder that you're not alone in this journey. Share this with one trader who you know is flying blind and doesn't even know it yet. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't a strategy, it's awareness. And if you're ready to build your own glass box, a system that tracks your emotional state as clearly as your P&L, then make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell. Because this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new series, How to Design an Emotionally Sovereign Trading Identity. Remember this, the market doesn't test your system. It tests your story. And the story only changes when you take the mic back from the echo. You are not the black box. You are the recorder, and the tape is yours now. The question is, what will you record next?